Good day. Welcome to Westchester Talk Radio, WestchesterTalkRadio.com. I'm John Marino. We are produced by Sharc Creative. We are made possible by Robeson Oil, the house that service built, by Michael Labriola, landscape design and construction of Armonk, by Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard, and by Jaguar Land Rover of New Rochelle, the White Plains, and Mount Kisco. Here on the Beat in Westchester, we are joined by John Bailey. John Bailey stopping by again. John, of course, is the publisher and the executive editor of White Plains CitizenNet reporter, WPCNR.com, and the host of, on a variety of cable channels and systems around Westchester, White Plains Week and People to be Heard. John Bailey, welcome back. It seems like we never have a shortage of things to talk about. For example, everything going on with gun control and everything.
Or lack thereof.
Congress, first of all, the House of Representatives, I guess within the last 48 hours now, has approved a package of some kind of gun legislation, which when it gets to the Senate is probably going to be turned around to be something a bit different. And yet here in New York State, Governor Hochul making it much more difficult now, signing into law a bill to make it a lot more difficult to get an assault rifle, an AR-15, and working with red flag laws so that those who maybe should not ever be able to get their hands on a weapon, or at least not right now when they apply, we make sure that they don't and are not able to do that.
Yes, Hochul, highly proactive, seems to write legislation overnight. And she is an express on issues. She gets out there before anybody ever has a reaction to it. She's got people running in a primary against her. The only one who is actually campaigning vigorously is Astorino on issues, criticizing her on them. And but unfortunately, Mr. Astorino, he's not, I don't think he's registering. I think Zeldin is more appealing than he is.
And, Andrew Giuliani, a lot of the polls show, too, on the Republican side now. Andrew Giuliani and Lee Zeldin have both come out and are asking Kathy Hochul to remove Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. And we see what happened in San Francisco. Chesa Boudin getting voted out, so-called woke prosecutor in San Francisco. We see in L.A. the race for mayor. And I hate to say it, but as a lifelong Democrat, I see a lot of Democrats will vote for someone if they call themselves a Democrat, no matter whom it might be. So Mr. Caruso out in L.A., who has been a lifelong Republican, now says he's a Democrat, and people vote for him surprisingly over Bass, and they do have to have this runoff. But in the wake of all this, where it seems like wokesters on the West Coast are not faring well, Lee Zeldin and Andrew Giuliani are calling upon Kathy Hochul to remove Manhattan District Attorney, supposed soft on crime, Alvin Bragg. And the head of the state,
he made a remark, didn't he?
Langworthy says she will never have the guts to do that. So, yeah. Rob, I'm surprised Rob Astorino did not come out in the midst of all this and have something to say, honestly. The former county executive.
He criticized her. He had a press conference just the last day on a very big issue with him, criticizing Hochul. And, I'm just having a blank. But that's
Rob Astorino has been hot on immigration and illegal immigrants being.
Oh, yes, it's the airport deal in Stewart.
Taken by, at Stewart Airport in Orange County, where we know last summer.
I knew that, folks.
The Biden administration was sending illegals up here to Westchester County Airport, which Rob Astorino was tracking. He has now tracked those flights to Stewart Airport in Newburgh in Orange County, too, and that seems to be his big issue. So I am kind of surprised that he didn't jump in with Andrew Giuliani and Lee Zeldin on the woke district attorney's issue. And yet on the Democratic Party side, we see Tom Suozzi trying to establish himself as the candidate of law and order. And yet, if the primary
lacks traction. He lacks a focus.
If the primary for governor were pushed back to August, maybe Swazi might have a chance, but that remained with the Hochul-mandering and the eventual redistricting by the special master. The race for governor, primaries for governor, will be at the end of this month in June. Same for state assembly, too. And I think Kathy Hochul's a shoo-in. I think on the Republican side, we are going to have a bit of a tussle between Lee Zeldin and Andrew Giuliani. Harry Wilson, billionaire businessman, has pumped so much money into the campaign. I don't think that's really going anywhere. How do you see the governor's primaries is shaping up just a few weeks from now on June 28th?
Unless Hochul gets really hit with an absolute surprise issue, she has totally seized the championing the right to an abortion in New York State. And this is going to resonate with many New York women. And of course, you always have a problem when you're a woman and you have the women electorate, because it always amazes me how women, even when you have a woman running, will sometimes vote against the woman, even though they appear to have a much more rational campaign. And this is a question. Does this mean that the women vote the way their husbands vote? I've always wondered about that.
I don't think so, honestly. And I don't think any woman should vote the way her husband or boyfriend or anybody else in her life happens to vote. And this is for anyone who goes to the polls, you vote as you see fit. How much of a factor on primary day do you think turnout might be?
I think it's a big time factor, because it's a terrible time. Everybody's getting prepared for July 4th weekend getaway. The primary is on your mind. In fact, I believe we start early voting now for it right now. And you had to get your qualification for early voting and your registration like a few days ago. People didn't have time to register for it. It's amazing.
You bring up a good point. July 4th holiday weekend, just a few days away, and there will be a number of people away and maybe out of state. And the question is, how diligent are they, if they are registered, about getting that early vote in, about getting that mail-in
or the absentee ballot?
The absentee ballot. Yeah. How much of a role might they play?
Yeah, they had to apply for that already too. So I think that's right.
But all right, we have a four-way race on the Republican side for governor. John Bailey, as you see it coming down the stretch, who will edge whom out in the end? And I think we'll both agree that Harry Wilson will finish fourth.
Well, no, I think Zeldin will probably win it. Why? Because he has that Nassau-Suffolk Republican pedigree, which gives him a lot of votes in the New York area, and he makes the best candidate, whereas Astorino, I think, is unknown out there in Nassau and Suffolk. He's not going to get that vote.
Now, remember, Rob Astorino was the candidate for governor in 2014, our former two-time county executive here in Westchester, and yet it doesn't seem his name recognition is out there as much as it should be. Keep in mind, Rob Astorino won county-wise most of New York State in 2014. Everything above the Hudson Valley. It was downstate where this area is much more populous, where Andrew Cuomo rolled to victory over Rob Astorino. And I don't know, I know Rob, going back with Rob for over 30 years, our days at WFAS in White Plains together, beginning back in the late 80s. We both came out of Fordham University a few years apart. I thought Rob maybe should have been out there a bit more during this campaign and pounding the pavement a bit more and letting people know, hey, I'm Rob Astorino. Remember I ran for governor. Remember I was Westchester County executive. Here is what I did. And if you like what I did and think I can do the same for you statewide, vote for me.
Well, he has not exactly maintained contact with the voters since he left the county executive position. And this is always a mistake. You're a career politician and you really have higher ambitions. If you get defeated in the in the election, as he was by Mr. Latimer, thanks to a total anti-Trump vote, basically. And Mr. Latimer's popularity and actual great debating ability with Mr. Estrell. When you basically don't get out there and keep things up, go back upstate and sort of really establish a name for yourself up there over the 4 years. And certainly he doesn't make any appearances in New York City. I don't recall him doing that.
How much of a factor do you think the anti or pro-Donald Trump vote might be on primary day amongst the Republican candidates for a governor they all have various levels of interaction and relationships with Donald Trump?
How much of a factor? Well, he has, his candidates have lost some primaries out west, but I think Trump has a really bad reputation in New York. He really does. He's lost a few suits that he put to avoid, and he comes across as someone who's afraid to come clean with what he has done.
It seems like, funny you talk about what he's done out west and candidates he supported there and other parts of the country, like down in Georgia, and yet we haven't seen Donald Trump come out in support of anybody anywhere in his home base of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. I find that interesting, even on the Republican
Well, I don't think the
side.
candidates want it. I don't think the candidates want his support because that's a reason not to vote for them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are a lot of people in the New York area, New York metropolitan area, that are really annoyed how he is costing them so much money with that salt tax he put in. I mean, that is a big factor, and people remember that. That is what the Democratic Party should be concentrating on, but you don't really know what the Democratic Party is running on in New York. What issues do they have? Look, we have Governor Hochul, a smart, intelligent, hardworking governor, and that's why you should vote for her.
Now, she is taking some...
That's about it.
Spending $2
Crime
million
is a problem.
to renovate her third office up in Buffalo, her hometown, in a building owned by a campaign contributor. The state is footing the taxpayer bill of $2 million to rebuild her office and renovate her office in Buffalo. Is this an issue, or is this just a perk that comes with the job? If you want to work from a certain place, you are the governor, and if you want to work from your bed, you have that right.
Well, if she wants to do it, and she feels she wants to have that Buffalo base where she feels comfortable, and it's probably safer. And I mean, you have to realize that a smart, intelligent politician who knows what they are doing is a threat to a lot of people.
So with that in mind...
They have a security risk. I think it's a security thing.
With that in mind, and what she's done with gun control now, and even though we've had some of the more stringent gun laws in this country already, is there any way we could get the strides we're making here in New York, even more so now, preventing the wrong, and I have to put it this way, the wrong type of people, at least if they got something going on up here when they try to get a gun, at that point, you shouldn't have one, and you got to make sure that we find and stop those people from getting guns or raising the age to 21 years old to get an assault rifle, get an AR-15. Is there any way, do you think the day will ever come that we can get something like this in effect around this entire country amongst all 50 states, or are we just so, as a nation, so divergent in the way we live in different parts of the country that it's never going to happen?
No, Congress won't do it because they are supported so much with money by manufacturers, and they do things at people that keep them in office with contributions want them to do. And that
what I
goes
found
for
pretty
any
interesting
industry.
was Chris Murphy from right next door in Fairfield County, congressman from Connecticut. And Chris Murphy, of course, right after the massacre down in Texas came out, said we have another Sandy Hook here again. 10 years later, and now just a few days ago, even though he's been leading the push for gun control, seemed to back off a bit as to how far he would go, where I think he just should have said, just press the issue even further and said, come on, let's do this, instead of looking for maybe a way out, a bill that takes some measures but doesn't go nearly as far as it should.
I mean, we have the head of the that committee from Texas, no surprise, saying that we shouldn't raise the age where you can get a gun up to 21.
And
so
this comes down to the way people in
18-year-olds?
different parts of the country look at life a lot differently than we do in this region of the country. I will give them that. They look at life differently than we do. Of course, most people in those parts of the country are not walking around in urban communities, and they have the kind of issues we have in urban areas like we do in the Northeast.
Right. Well, we have this disconnect, but whenever a terrible shooting takes place in Texas or Mississippi or anywhere,
Iowa,
everybody
Tennessee,
who are the parents of those kids or persons that get shot,
Oklahoma,
are devastated, and they don't realize that this can happen to them, and there's not going to be. How about national gun buybacks? I mean, I cannot understand. I mean, there were.
Yeah, you know, when we do a gun buyback in Mount
yesterday.
Vernon, for example, we've done a number of them in Mount Vernon. They work. They do work. And you
Money
have
talks,
to hope that
nobody walks. Right.
he who turns in their weapon doesn't go out and get another one in due time because they feel like, well, I shouldn't have done that.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're turning it in to get something in return, and whether it be a gift card or whatever, you know what? You're getting a gun off the street. Every gun you get off the street moves us in the right direction. At least that's the way I think.
Yes. I mean, Ms. Roca came out, our Westchester County DA came out yesterday with a very good news release about her gun control policy. And I think it was really quite rational. And I hope that they are able to implement it.
John Bailey is the executive editor and publisher of White Plains CitizenNet Reporter, WPCNR.com, and the host of White Plains Weekend, people to be heard on a variety of cable systems all around Westchester. John, with our June 28th primary in New York for the split primaries, we have governor and assembly that day, and we have state senate and Congress at the end of August. We talked governor. Now for the assembly, the key race locally still seems to be the race for the 92nd Assembly District, and a couple of Democrats who ideologically seem to be pretty similar. County Legislator Mary Jane Shimsky challenging the incumbent, longtime incumbent, Tom Abenante. Keep in mind, Mary Jane Shimsky worked for Tom Abenante's predecessor, the late and highly respected Richard Brodsky. Is this a race where turnout may be a determining factor? Because when it comes to the issues, there's really not much difference between Tom Abenante and Mary Jane Shimsky.
Well, I think Abenante, being the incumbent and being quite vocal on a number of issues, he has the edge here.
And Tom Abenante said that I'm just, after 12 years in the assembly, I'm just becoming part of assembly leadership right now. And he respects Mary Jane Shimsky and the fact that she wants to represent the district too. And he points out, what do you make of this and what's your take on this? He says, for someone to get elected to basically become a newbie in this position, which is what Mary Jane Shimsky would be as an assembly person, a new assembly person, that you can't just walk into leadership. You have to build relationships within your own party and across the aisle. And he said, look how long it took me to finally be allowed into leadership. It's not something she's going to be able to do right away.
So now I can do something. That doesn't make sense, does it? I've been there 12, now I can do something. Now,
That
what
was
happens?
his point.
What
Now I
happens when
can
you
do
try to
something
do
because I'm in the leadership.
What happens when you try to do something when you're a freshman or something? You make enemies in your own party.
We're going to
because
get
you're
to
not
that
supposed
when it comes to
speak out.
Congress and
That's
Mondaire
what
Jones.
happened to Jamal Bowman.
And
Jamal
Mondaire
Bowman got
Jones.
screwed. Mondaire Jones got screwed by the Democrats. They don't
Okay, so
like
let's
him
go to that
because
now.
of
The race for Congress.
They unseated Klein.
And this tic-tac-toe of the redistricting and the Hochul mander. And then the special master gets involved. Now we have a real mess, honestly. We got a mess here. So Sean Patrick Maloney, the head of the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Committee, that they control the purse strings, and he controls the purse strings, and he's been in the 18th District and the northern part of Westchester into the Hudson Valley and Putnam and Orange County and Dutchess County. And now the gerrymander happens, and all of a sudden he says, I don't want to be part of the 18th District anymore. I want to run in the 17th District, which is where Anita Lowy was, and Mondaire Jones won election when she retired a couple of years ago. And that was a Westchester, a White Plains, Ossining area, and then all of Rockland County District. And now with the new special master's plans that he has instituted, Putnam County, part of Putnam County is going to be part of this district too. So Sean Patrick Maloney says, I want to run for this district now, the 17th. Mondaire Jones, you get out. Mondaire Jones says he's going to run in the 10th district in lower Manhattan and over across the Brooklyn Bridge and through downtown Brooklyn out into Park Slope. Bill de Blasio throws his hat into the ring for that position too. And now Mike Lawler, Rockland County Republican Assemblyman, says he will enter the fray on the Republican side to go against whoever the Democratic candidate happens to be in the 17th, seemingly Sean Patrick Maloney. However, now Alessandra Biaggi, the state senator from the Bronx/Southern Westchester, now, she was going to run in the newly redrawn 3rd district in the old Tom Suozzi district, being gerrymandered from northern Suffolk and Nassau and the Bronx and Queens and the Sound Shore area. The special master threw that out. We thought Biaggi was stuck running there anyway. Now she says she's going to run and challenge Sean Patrick Maloney in the 17th, and AOC comes out and supports Alessandra Biaggi against Sean Patrick Maloney. John, you can't make this stuff up. You can't.
No. However, the situation is that Biaggi, I believe, doesn't have enough of the minority that elected her when you take into account the incredible 60% white vote of registered voters in that 17th district. That I do not understand why they picked this guy who is from Pennsylvania to make he just bounced everything out. But the whole concept was to make it evenly represented. There's nothing evenly represented in that 17th.
So should Sean Patrick Maloney, honestly, if he didn't want to be part of the 18th anymore, should he have just stepped aside and said, I'm not running for anything, instead of basically kicking Mondaire Jones out and then having one of his people basically say, well, Mondaire, you might be better off representing another area, which I found quite offensive. If I'm Mondaire Jones,
that was really terrible, because one of the more active persons in Congress has been Mondaire Jones, and
since day one,
he made a lot of sense. And we, as Westchester County, has lost its talent.
And I'm going to point this out. As soon as Mondaire Jones took office, he went across the river in his new district there in Rockland County in West Nyack and took care of a flooding issue in a neighborhood in West Nyack that had been an issue for 30 years. Mondaire Jones came right in and worked with George Holman, the supervisor, up there in Rockland County, in that portion of the county, the town supervisor, and they worked together to get this flooding issue solved after 30 years of trying to get it done. That's only one thing Mondaire Jones did. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say Mondaire Jones will win the Democratic nomination in the 10th district against Bill de Blasio and assorted other challengers there. And maybe for Mondaire Jones, maybe he's better off.
We should hope so,
Now, a number of people who worked for Bill de Blasio the last decade in a variety of capacities are now working for Mondaire Jones. I think that's all you need to know about Bill de Blasio and his candidacy, and Mondaire Jones's candidacy, too.
Well, the problem is, I have to say that Mr. de Blasio, in my memory, has to be the most unpopular mayor of New York City since John Lindsay. John Lindsay presided over the garbage strike, the DPW problem with clearing snow in Queens, and the subway strike. And that destroyed his candidacy, and he was vilified. And Mr. de Blasio made lots of really bad decisions about COVID, a lot of bad decisions about education. He wasn't ready for prime time. Just because you work for the Clintons doesn't mean you're good.
The subway strike, memories and images of Michael Quill, the union leader.
Pipsqueak. He called the mayor a
pipsqueak. Mind.
Yes.
There you
Never
go.
forget that quote.
And John, by the way, let's not forget the 12th district and the upper portions of Manhattan, the Upper East Side across to the Upper West Side, now all part of the same district, where Jerry Nadler lives on the Upper West Side. He represented the Lower West Side, and what is the 10th now in that district that Mondaire Jones and Bill de Blasio are running in, and Jerry Nadler says, I'm not going to run there anymore, and he tells Carolyn Maloney to get the heck out of the way, and she's been representing what had been a majority Upper East Side district. Now it's Upper East, Upper West. Maloney against Nadler. What I don't get is Democrats telling fellow and sister Democrats, here I come, get out of my way. This is my district now, and get the heck out, despite everything you've done here. That doesn't make the party look good.
Team? How you see, this is how uncreative these people really are. If I am Nadler and I am Maloney, I say, we have done a lot. We can do more together, and they run as a team. It could be done. I don't think there's anything against that. What do you think? Of course, that's way out of the box, but it would be unique in preserving two voices who can handle different sides of issues, but have expertise in every issue since they've been in Congress so long. But no, the Democrats screwed them both.
John, here's the catch to all this. Here we are in early June, and the race for Congress. Who knows what happens between now and the end of August? Who else might get into the fray, for example? Who else might get involved in the races for state Senate, in the races for Congress? Now, the June races for the Assembly and for governor were pretty much set. Andrew Cuomo had a deadline to, if he wanted to run as a Democrat again or run independently to get his petitions in. He did not do that, so I don't think he's going to be any kind of a factor. But we could have a really hot summer with all this when it comes to the races for Congress and for the state Senate, and who knows what else might heat up. Oh, speaking of a hot summer and heating up, how about those Con Ed potential price increases of 11 to 14% based on what's going on with the economy?
Yeah, and how about that totally reprehensible fake mailing that Con Ed sends out, asking people, if you want clean energy, all you have to do is put the account number of your supplier down in this box, send it in, and you'll get. That's a Con Ed promotion to offset the loss of business they're getting hit by Westchester Power.
All right, now Con Ed says we have to do this because of our increases in the supplies we need to obtain in order to make sure you, John Marino, you, John Bailey, have everything. You want to turn on your AC during the summer, you got to pay a little more for it. Or, well, 12 to 14, 11 to 14% may not be a little more, might be significantly more, but if you want
that is a lot. And not only that,
work with us.
What the thing with Westchester Power is, which I have, point of full disclosure, they give you a steady rate for the entire year, and your usage is what depends on how high your bill is, but you don't pay any more per kilowatt. What Con Ed does to you is they jack the kilowatt price in the summer It goes
We have
up.
record prices now at gas stations around the county.
But I mean, how can
around this tri-state area?
Point of order here. Why can't the director of consumer affairs in Westchester County go after Con Ed on this totally misleading mailing that they've now sent out twice? So if it hadn't worked the first time, they wouldn't send it out a second time. I've gotten that. I was in the direct mail business. It's totally unclear. They have, and it also indicates that you have a guaranteed rate, but it could go up in the next month.
And besides going after that, maybe go after some gas stations that might be price gouging. And I'm not an economist. I couldn't tell you if they are or
washing his hands. No one has made any statements in this county on inflation or this price gouging. And come on, the end of June, it's going to be $7. That's what I think, because they're already about $5.89 now. So it usually goes up.
Yeah, it's just over $5 a gallon in New York State now, just over $5 in New Jersey, and $4.96 per gallon on average as we speak in Connecticut. 503 in New Jersey, 501 in New York, and 4.
And that kills you if you have to commute.
And that's for regular, never mind plus or super or diesel.
Regular for cash.
John, are you going out to get your electric vehicle? Going to get your EV? You know, all the money we spend on gas, we can put it into an EV.
I can't go to a place where I can, if I go up to Rockland County and my battery starts getting low, where do I get it?
Right.
Where do I get the plug-in? And then you have to wait 2 hours.
I drive around the tri-state area for a lot of different reasons. Where do I, I'm out there on the LIE and I'm running low. Where do I go if I'm not near the exit 51 rest area on the LIE, for example? I got to wait till I get out by Sills Road, exit 66 in the rest area out there. What do I do in between if need be? John, all these other issues we're dealing with here too, for example, the baby formula shortage. Do we seem to be at least catching up with that, or are we still in crisis mode?
Well, a few months ago when this broke and just got divulged after about 3 months when everybody knew about it down in Washington, I found that fascinating at that time. We'll get it back in 2 weeks. And I said at the time, wait a minute, if you do the addition, they haven't started correcting it. Now, the reason they hadn't started correcting it is they don't want to admit liability. If they start correcting it, then that means they knew something was wrong. If this is all worked so that Abbott does not get hit with hundreds of liability suits. That's the way things work. I mean, and to my way of thinking, it's now going to be the end of June before the formula comes back. And I said that 3 months ago.
John, I want to make you aware that I was informed seconds before we began that we may be facing in this country now a sriracha shortage. So what will we do if we go to Chipotle and we got no sriracha to put on, what we're getting, our Chipotle chicken, etc.? What will we do at a place like Chipotle or at the kitchen table at home? And I like the spicy stuff.
Well, I don't think that's on anyone's radar yet, but I want to thank you for revealing that. You heard it first.
Just informed, as I said, as we began.
Yes, but I mean, the whole food situation is interesting because if Russia commandeers all the Ukraine grain,
right,
that is going to cause quite a shortage that will be very tough. And
now Russia and Turkey are working on a deal, and the Turks have always been close to the Russians. Latest that we have on that is that they're working on a deal where they say, we can get the grain out and the corn and the wheat out, but hey, Ukrainians, turn off all of those mines that you have set in the port there in Odessa and southwestern Ukraine so we don't get blown up, or pull those mines out. Meantime, the Ukrainians are worried that if this passageway is opened up, it could open the passageway for Russian ships to shoot right in and take over Odessa. So what do we do here? I don't know. Do we go back to maybe like the Prohibition era and where we made grain and wheat and barley at home and manufactured our own alcohol? Should we be manufacturing our own grain, wheat, and corn in our basements nowadays, 100 years later?
Have to turn it over to organized crime.
Going to turn my backyard into a grain and wheat farm. It's not a big backyard, but maybe we can do it back there.
Well, right now, somebody in Washington has to be taking a look at our agricultural potential and how it's being threatened. I was reading about the Utah disaster at the Salt Lake because they shut off snow flow to the Great Salt Lake so that you could irrigate in the mountains. And a lot of rich people now own those places. And so, once again, greed and not knowing enough about the environment has caused what promises to be an absolute economic disaster in Utah.
Now, John, with everything we have going on, COVID is on the back burner, or seemingly so.
Which is unfortunate.
The numbers have been going up bit by bit. They've been around 10%, a bit above 9.4, 9.6, 9.8. This is something we still have to deal with and not get our lives back.
3,000 infections a week. It means 3,000 infections a week. The CDC absolutely did something that made everybody feel good that we were controlling COVID. They put out the average number of cases per week in increments of 100,000 population. Quick, what is the population of Westchester County? You know it. I know it. Does the average Westchester County resident know that?
Maybe not.
I would say they don't.
Yeah.
So therefore, you have to take the 35 infections averaged a day by Westchester County per 100,000 and multiply that by 10. That's 3,000 a week. And that's what's wrong with that. I think that has made everybody very overconfident that we have a low infection rate. We don't. We had 366 yesterday.
Have we let our guard down? Is that why this rate is staying up there? And I got the impression from certain people back in February, March that, you know what? Okay, Omicron, BA2 seems to be slacking off. But hold on, John. What's going to happen in May and June? And it makes you wonder about, things they're seeing.
Well, what's going to happen?
Maybe they see things.
I will tell you what's going to happen.
Could happen 2 or 3 months down the road, and we don't hear about it yet. But we see it now.
Well, you will hear about it because by mid-July, we will start ramping up. Now, we were down last June, but we're not down now.
Right, and that's what's in my mind. Why not now, if so then? Or if you're worried about the upcoming fall because the last 2 falls, autumns were not good. How do we get out of this cycle eventually? There has to be a way. And oh, by the way, Novavax now, of course, saying that they have a new vaccine. The FDA's advisors telling the FDA, go ahead, let's do it. They're using a different model, different kind of technology than what we have with the COVID vaccine so far. And yet there seem to be, on the other end, there seems to be those who say, let's not do Novavax just yet.
Well, I cannot keep the vaccines straight. And the FDA doesn't seem to be able to make up its mind. One's okay, one is not. We know why one isn't, and the other is not. We're not getting a straight story. The CDC has lost a lot of credibility by changing their stories so frequently.
Even day by day, where today they say, yeah, this vaccine looks good, and tomorrow they say, well, hold on. Or today they say that vaccine, tomorrow they say, go get it right now.
Well, I tell you, I would get vaccinated again. I have had every shot I'm eligible to get. And I'm also not going out much. And at Playland, I wore a mask today. And I was one of the few that did.
Yeah, I was in stores today where I was the only person that had a mask on. I was in a pizzeria, and I know people look at me, and I do want to say, like, it's not over, no matter what you think. And we are indoors. And if we're going to be indoors for anything more than like 10 seconds, if I had, paid by app or by phone or whatever and just went and pick a bag up, I would still put a mask on. That's just me. That's just me. Yeah.
No, that it has to be a personal decision because I'm not a good patient. My wife is very fortunate. I've had, knock on wood, fortunate health in my life because she can't stand it when I'm sick. Cannot stand it.
And I know a couple of people who just had COVID too. So, and they did have to lay up at home a bit. So I'll leave you with this thought, John. Going into Memorial Day weekend, a colleague of mine said, "Hey, Marino, have a great Memorial Day weekend. Just make sure you stay away from COVID, stay away from monkeypox, and you should be okay." Oh, monkeypox. We forgot about that too. It's like the last 2 years plus.
Spread by touching.
Just an entire pox on us.
In fact, that was one thing that was good about Mr. Latimer's COVID briefing. He explained how you get monkeypox. And monkeypox is through touching. So you just have to abstain from sexual relations for the first thing.
Yeah, it's good we're doing it like this, right? We're not even shaking
exactly.
Hands,
we are protecting each other.
Like I don't think we can pass monkeypox.
That is not really a good joke to make, but I mean, I've been reading, they bury things like how you catch it. I'm told by my wife, who apparently reads every word of New York Times articles, that it was in an article about how you got monkeypox. But hey, it should be up front. It should be up front. The biggest facts are often buried in journalism, way down in the column, because it's much easier to give your opinion.
Like paragraph 18, what should be the lead, right?
Exactly. Hey, whatever happened to who, what, when, where, and
why, right, and how. Yeah. It happens too often. I think we're in paragraph 16 or 22 and say, wait a second. Isn't this supposed to be the lead? Well, I'm glad I read the whole article.
Nobody knows what a lead is these days.
Yeah, I guess those coming up in the business were raised differently than you and I were. So that's just the way it goes. I just hope we are not going to need a monkeypox vaccine too.
Well, I want a spot featuring a J. Fred Muggs, if we can bring him back, explaining how you get monkeypox and how to protect yourself. People would watch that. Tired of people in white coats.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If we go buy a white coat on our own at Nordstrom or whatever and we wear it out in the street, that's one thing. But
now that I'm thinking
about white coats medically, we've seen too much of that the last 2.5 years, and we just wait and hope for the day to come when life can be back to normal. And then again, it may never be.
Well, we are going back to normal, despite the fact that we are not in a normal situation.
That's a good way to put it. John Bailey is the executive editor, publisher of White Plains CitizenNet, reporter, WPCNR.com. And he also is the host of a couple of shows all across a variety of cable systems around Westchester. White Plains Weekend People to be heard. John Bailey, we thank you. As always, we'll talk to you again soon.
Yes, so long from my undisclosed location.
There you go. We'll keep it undisclosed. Me too. I'm in the studios of Westchester Talk Radio. I'm John Marino on the Beat in Westchester. We are produced by Sharc Creative. You see the big logo on the wall behind me, and we are made possible by Robeson Oil, the house that service built, by Michael Labriola, landscape design and construction of Armonk, by Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard, and by Jaguar Land Rover of White Plains, New Rochelle, and Mount Kisco. Catch all of our Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, and Dutchess, Orange, and Fairfield County talk radio programming on our YouTube channel, Sharc Creative YouTube. Download our app. Take it with you 24/7, 365, anywhere and everywhere you go. It's called Westchester Talk.